In this video, I want to show you an exercise that I like to do with my students in class. It's a very simple illustrations technique exercise. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a simple sketch from sketch stage to finished illustration. Here's how I like to do it. I've chosen a sheet of tracing paper and redrawn this sketch. I'm going to rub in some terracotta chalk onto the back of the tracing paper. I want to make sure that there's no loose chalk. I'm going to press it into the back of the tracing paper. I now have a working drawing. This is a drawing that I can easily transfer to different surfaces. Once I've done that, I'm going to tape that down to my work surface, and I'm going to redraw that drawing. I like to use a different colored pen for every time I do a transfer drawing. That way I can tell if I've covered all the areas. Once I've transferred the drawing, I'm going to complete this illustration using a fine tip felt marker. But before I do that, let me talk about some technique. Here's what I'm going to suggest you do. Let's create a very gentle S-curve like this. Now there's nothing wrong with this curve. However, it lacks a little bit of character. And I'm going to draw another line so that it creates a shape, a calligraphic shape, something that might almost have been created by a brush. Now, when I do this sort of exercise, I'm reminded of my days as a classical animator when I used to animate by hand. Here's an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon. This is what the assistant animators would do in productions like this. Draw out the line and then shape it with a secondary line and then filling it in. This level of control does take practice. But there are other ways of creating lines. The calligraphic lines are very smooth, but what if we wanted to create a nervous line that conveyed a nervous energy? I think this line would create some sort of nervous energy. Or how about a line like this? There's so many different ways of creating lines, but let's get back to our illustration. So I'm just going to jump in by starting with my main line. And again, there's nothing wrong with this, but it lacks a little bit of character. I'm going to redraw this entire drawing with a single line. I'm going to try to put it down as confidently as possible. But what I'm going to do once I've got that line down is I'm going to go back over like I did with the earlier line and build up some thickness. You'll notice I put a little bit more emphasis on the contour line or the outer line. The inner lines I tend to keep a little bit lighter. Again, this is to help suggest volume and depth with just a single line. I think this actually does a fairly good job of that. But here's another way of suggesting line. This is a line that mimics the woodcut or lino cut style of an artist like Irene Rinaldi. But this goes right back to the early days of illustration in the Gutenberg era, when all illustrations were created by woodblock. Or how about a line like this? I mentioned that nervous energy type of line earlier. This has a completely different feel to it. I'm rushing this a little bit, I have to admit, but you get the idea. How we approach our line will have a big part to play in how this illustration eventually looks. Now I want to finish this here by talking about this last technique using something called Scratchboard. You may have seen something like this at your art supplies place if you haven't already played with it. I love working with this. Now, Scratchboard is essentially a white clay-coated surface that has a very even layer of ink applied over top of it. And using a little scraper like this, you can scrape away that black ink, revealing the white clay paper underneath. The way I like to work is to scrape away a little bit at a time and then build up those scraped away areas to build up tone. Now, here is that same sketch transferred to the surface of my Scratchboard. And the way I like to work is to begin my drawing with these little dots. But as I continue, I realize that I really just need to create a strong outline around my apple. I find the appeal of working this way is that it gives you a very strong and graphic look. But like the woodcut, it can be kind of rough, and it sort of highlights the hand of the artist. Now again, I'm using these little dots to suggest the contour lines. And you'll see as I proceed that I will just go back over these lines, revealing a little bit more of the white surface underneath as it's necessary. And again, the appeal of working this way is the roughness that is left behind. Now, I apologize if this makes you dizzy as I spin this around. And there is your final. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful for you. Good luck.